Well, I think the main lesson is that we need to move away from a reliance upon passive means of communication, which is distributing leaflets or pamphlets, to more active forms of engagement, to encourage more involvement in activities, or if we're presenting information, is to not to present it in a passive format, but to present it in ways which ask questions of people, so that they're asking them, how safe is your property? How do you know that? Have you checked things? Things that actually cause them to ask questions of themselves, hopefully. The more effective methods are social in nature, so that where people are engaged in discussion with other people, where people are given the different scenarios to think about, questions to reconsider, are all more important sort of mechanisms. So I think that it's the research suggests that we need more engagement-based processes, and having the more sort of traditional types of information dissemination through sort of pamphlets and things that are there to support those activities. We've also got to break down the information and present it in smaller and more meaningful chunks. One of the things that we have found is that when presented with information about risk and what to do about it, the information is often presented in quite substantial documents, so often running to several pages. And although that information is very good, it tends to overwhelm people. They see it as being too complex, too difficult, and often not appropriate for their circumstances, because they're often being asked to make these decisions before fire is actually broken out, so at the start of the fire season, when we're trying to get people to prepare. Presented with large lists of information, people also tend to gravitate to the most complex or expensive options, and then dismiss that because they're then making decisions that it's too difficult to do these things. We've found that when we break things down, so we give people little chunks of information to think about, so we'd focus on one particular kind of preparedness, like creating a defensible space. So what is it? Do you have one? How would you know if you've got one? How do you know how big it's going to have to be? So we focus on things that people would have to focus on. And that may be sort of breaking it down so that rather than presenting people with information in one go as they get it once a week. So it may be that there are things in the newspapers that once a week there'll be a focus on one particular area of preparation, followed by others, and that spreads things out a bit and presents information in smaller chunks for individuals. Well, I think the media have quite an important role to play. A lot depends. The issue of warnings is quite an interesting one, as warnings themselves fall into that sort of risk homeostasis category. People may be less likely to prepare if they think there is a good warning system in place, because they overestimate the time that they will have available between receiving a warning and when they will have to act. We've found in interviews that when we ask people about what would be a sufficient time for them to prepare on receiving a warning, it's varied from 2 hours to a week, depending on what people have in place. Now, in both of those cases, there's a degree of reliance on warning, but in one case, the reliance on warning is based upon having specific preparations in place, which can be put into action. The role that the media would have to play would depend very much on each of those two situations. It would be for those who are not adequately prepared, it would be to advise them to leave immediately. For others so again, it gets down to this issue about what is a plan and how well people have actually prepared for that. And it would take a long time to go into the contingencies that develop there. But the media would be talking about enacting the plan, and what aspects would constitute a good plan. It is possible for the media to play a more interactive role throughout the entire season through things like, particularly for ABC, is to have, and through their sort of community radio, to have more regular sessions on what constitutes good preparedness, what it might mean to have more regular discussions with people who have done things, particularly with people who have actually done things in the past and where they've proven to be effective. And that's a very good way of getting information across. When the information comes from somebody that people can relate to, somebody from a similar type of community, and particularly those who have experienced fire, who have prepared, and where those preparations have been effective, it can be very important. It's very important that the media don't sensationalise things. When we talked about negative outcome expectancy earlier, the media is probably one of the main sources of people's belief that preparing is not effective. Is largely because of they will often sensationalise and focus on the losses and that occurred rather than the survivors and the effective cases. And even in the coverage that came after the fires in February this year, is that most of the running commentary, even though passing images of houses that appeared to be relatively intact, the commentary was all about the devastation and loss. Where the media do focus on survival, then they often dismiss that as lucky or just some fortuitous circumstance rather than how well prepared people might be for these events.